Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode. I'm so excited that you are here. This is going to be the final episode in my series on goal setting. I'll likely do some more videos on goal setting in the future, but this kind of rounds out the last 3 episodes. So if you haven't listened to those ones give you all of the information about what you're doing wrong when you're goal setting, why you should only pick one goal, and really the main benefit of setting goals and kind of the side effects that you get by going after your goals. So you should check those out. But this one arguably might be the most important topic on goal setting because it's what to do after you've set the goal. And I feel like this is the thing that nobody really talks about. Like there's a lot about, how to pick the right goal, what kind of goal to pick and all of that really great stuff. And then there's so much momentum leading up to like picking your goal and then there's nothing. Then it's like, okay, go out and accomplish it. And I think that obviously the hard part doesn't start until you actually go after the goal. And there's a lot to kind of consider to make sure that you set yourself up for success, to make sure you stick with it, that doesn't get covered. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. So what do you do? Now you have this shiny, wonderful goal. You're going into the new year. You're super excited. You're super motivated. You have something that's measurable. You know what you're going to do. Now what? I want to give you a couple of tips that I think can fundamentally change whether you actually hit that goal or not. The first thing is that you have to break it down into something smaller. So for a lot of us, we've sort of been taught, it's all arbitrary by the way, but like we typically in our society, we see a lot of yearly goals, right? New Year's resolutions, you're thinking about something for the whole next year. That's fine, but that's almost too far for your brain to be able to conceptualize. And so you're going to want to break it down into something that you can kind of figure out in the short term, what am I focusing on, right? I typically like to break down my goals into 90-day goals. Again, it's just like a nice breakdown. It's arbitrary, but I typically do 4 quarters. And then within each quarter, I break it down each month. So the way I like to do it is like I either decide what I'm going to work on every quarter for 4 quarters, like this is the progression that it's going to take, and then I break it down, or I'll just decide like, okay, the next quarter, the next 90 days, this is what I have to focus on in order to kind of get myself closer to this goal. And then I think about within that 90 days, what am I going to work on in the first month? The reason this is so important is a couple of things. One, obviously, like it helps you in strategizing and actually having a game plan and actually having steps, which is what will prevent you from spinning in confusion and giving up. A lot of times we might have a goal, but then like once we get into it, we end up getting really overwhelmed with like, well, what should I work on today? And what should I work on now? And should I do this or should I do that? And there's so many things you can do. And there likely are so many steps you could take that we end up getting really confused and then we give up. And so you really want to make sure that you have a very clear focus so that even when you don't feel like it, even when things come up, like this is what I'm supposed to be working on. There's no like ifs, ands, or buts. And so that might take the form, like for certain goals, it might be the same thing every week, every month. It might be, I'm going to work out 3 days a week. So the goal is to work out 3 days a week. It's not really much to, break down. But I might pick the days that I'm going to work. I might set up an accountability partner. I might get a trainer. I might, get the workout clothes I need or sign up for the gym that I need to go to or whatever, however that's going to set me up for the next 90 days. Or it might be something like, let's say my goal for the end of the year is to start a business or to launch that podcast or that blog. I might look at like, okay, in the first quarter, what am I going to work on? Like the first quarter might be, setting up my website and getting the URL and setting up my social media handles and, setting up the podcast on the podcast hosting platforms, that kind of stuff. I'm going to break that down to know like, okay, I'm not going to work on all this other stuff. I'm not going to work on how to grow my audience or learning how to grow on social media or, even outlining all of my podcast episodes or securing guests. Like maybe the first quarter, I'm just focusing on getting the back end set up. When I know that, it alleviates so much of the overwhelm of when my brain tells me like I should be doing more, I should be reaching out to guests, I should be lining up a studio to record it, I should be, doing all these things. It's like, no, we're spending the first quarter doing this. Then the next quarter, we're going to spend like lining up the guests, outlining podcast episodes, you get the picture. Like once you break it down, it becomes a lot easier to not only know what you are going to work on, but more importantly, what you're not going to work on, so that you don't overwhelm yourself, so that you don't stay confused, so that you're not spinning, and that you're actually working on something. So that's what I would do first, is whatever goal you've picked, get very clear on what you're going to work on in the next 30 days and the next 90 days. Like, what is the things the steps that you have to take in order to like move the needle forward. I also think the thing that this helps with is oftentimes in our brain, we think we should be doing way more than is actually possible. And so if you write it down, you start realizing how ridiculous it is. Like if you think that you should, have the back end up and have the podcast set up and have guests already agreed and have a schedule and hire a VA and, outline a bunch of episodes and all that stuff. If you're doing it on a couple hours a week, you can maybe see that like, okay, I'm biting off more than I can chew and I'm going to get overwhelmed or it's going to become too much. And so you can start gauging like what's realistic for me in the next month, 2 months. That's going to keep me kind of going. Okay. So that's step one, is like, just have a plan for the near future, not for the whole year. What's it going to be for the near future? Step number 2 is expect it to be hard. And what do I mean by that? And expect yourself to be inconsistent. I think that for whatever reason, I don't really quite understand why we do this, but we have these delusions that once we set a goal, all of a sudden we're going to be a different person. All of a sudden we're going to stick to it. We're not going to have any problems. We're going to be so motivated the whole time. We're going to be able to control how we feel, and we're going to get ourselves to do the thing, and there's not going to be any issue. And I don't have to tell you that's not how it works, and then that's not how any of us act. And yet what happens is when we end up, doing it, maybe we're motivated for the first 2 weeks, and then the motivation wanes, and then, you're left with having to do the hard work of going to the gym or, starting that podcast. And when you don't want to do it, or when you, skip out on doing it one day or whatnot, you give in to your, urge to just sit and scroll. We take that as a sign of like, see, I'm not meant for this. I knew I would never do this. I should just give up. I'll never stick to this. And then we give up. And it's not the being inconsistent that was the problem. Everyone's inconsistent. It's that you made it mean something about you. You made it mean something about your personality. You made it mean something about your ability to even stick with this goal. And then that got you to give up, right? It's that black and white thinking, that all or nothing, like either I do it all full out 100% or it's not worth it, that gets you to kind of give up. And I want you to just expect that you're not going to be at 100%. Like expect that you're going to be inconsistent. Because here's the thing. If you could already do it 100% correctly, wonderfully, without any problems, you wouldn't need to have that as a goal. It wouldn't be a goal that you would set. Okay? Somebody that is just naturally athletic, that has always been athletic since they were a child, that's always like working out 6 days a week, doesn't need to set a goal to work out, right? Doesn't have a goal to like run a marathon probably, because they could just do it. It's just something that they've been able to do. They don't really have a lot of resistance to it. They find a lot of enjoyment from it. They have the energy for it. God bless them. And so they just do it. When you pick a goal, it's usually something that is very difficult for you. So expect it to be difficult. It's usually something that doesn't come naturally to you. So expect that it's going to be hard for you to do it. And A, don't be surprised by that. And B, know that like the reason you're picking that goal is to learn how to make that thing be easy for you. And that's going to take practice. So one of the things I talk about in the last episode, 2 episodes ago, I talked about why you should have one goal. And for me, every year I only pick one goal for the year, is because I know it's going to take me a year to become really consistent at that thing. So when my goal was to work out 3 days a week, like, yes, I had it set up to work out 3 days a week, but I knew, and this is different than like letting myself off the hook, but I knew in the beginning it was going to be such a struggle that there was going to be weeks that I missed it, that I, life got in the way. I felt sick. My body hurt too much. I just gave up, whatever. But I kept coming back because I wanted to become the person that just very easily works out 3 days a week. And that took almost a year for me to get to that place where it was like, wasn't even a question. It was like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, this is when we're working out. And it became more routine. If I had given up because in January or February, I wasn't at that natural place, I wasn't just doing it naturally, I would have never gotten to the point where now I do work 3, 4, 5 days a week, work out without a lot of trouble, because now I'm in year 3 of that goal for me. Like I've been doing that for about 3 years now. So it's become a part of my self-concept, right? How I look at myself, my personality, it's just become easier. Same thing like for any of you, for anything that you pick. If you're picking, let's say, I always go with the analogy of running a marathon. I just think it sets a clear example. But like, if you're someone that's gonna run a marathon, like it likely is that the skills that are required to run a marathon are difficult for you, both physically, but also mentally. Like maybe you are someone that like, having a lot of discipline or like doing things for really long periods of time, like running for 3 hours is something that's very difficult for you to just like even get your mind on board. It's going to be difficult. There's going to be times you're not going to want to do it. And there's going to be times that you give into that. That's okay. The entire name of this game is like, how many times can you bring yourself back? How many times can you like fall off that horse and then bring yourself back, with the goal that towards the end, it becomes a lot easier, right? It becomes a habit. It becomes something that you can sort of integrate into your life. And so I say this when I think this could have been broken up into two things, but I think both expecting that it's not going to feel good. Like it's going to be hard. You're not going to be motivated all the time. You're not going to want to do it. So like expect that. Because I think sometimes we think like, well, it shouldn't feel this way. Like because I hate it too much, it's some signal that I shouldn't do it. No, it's just that you pick something that is out of your comfort zone. And by definition, it is uncomfortable. And so I should know it's not going to feel great. And I'm also going to know because it doesn't feel great, I'm not going to be consistent with it. And that's okay. That's what I'm working at. What I'm working at is, I always give the example of like meditation. Like the point isn't to not have any thoughts. It's like how many times can you bring yourself back to center? How many times can you bring yourself back to a place where you're kind of clearing your thoughts and you're building that muscle? You're doing the same thing here. Like you're building the muscle of like how many times can I fall off and bring myself back and like build up the muscle of like doing the thing I said I was going to do. And I don't have to be perfect at it in month one. So I think this is the most important part, is that like when you're going towards doing this, know that if you are not consistent, that doesn't mean all is lost, right? It means that this is the skill that you are working towards. This is why you picked this goal, so that you can build this muscle of learning how to do this hard thing. And so you just expect that. I know like when I was, when I picked the exercise goal, I remember this like vividly, I had to really get on board with like what I hated about it so much, like what I hated feeling when I would work out, or like what I kind of dreaded, what I resisted. And I had to make it kind of conscious, like become aware of like, know that you are going to feel that and nothing has gone wrong. Know that you're not going to want to do it, that you're going to be like, your brain's going to try to talk you out of it. Know that it's going to feel like shit. For me, not for everybody, but for me it did, right? It was like, know that in the middle of the workout, you're going to think I'm dying, and you're not actually dying. You're totally fine. But of course that's going to be there. And I think when I stopped getting surprised by that, when I was like, yeah, of course I'm going to hate it my whole way through, until I did it enough times that I was like, it's not that bad. I'm getting stronger. I felt myself getting stronger. I felt it getting easier. I started seeing the benefits of it. I started getting the endorphin highs. I started realizing the benefits, that come from it. And then that changed how I looked at it. But I just expected it to be hard. And I feel like that didn't rock me, to the point where I gave up on the goal. So that's number 2. And the last piece of advice that I would give you, that I think is the most important, that nobody does, is you have to constantly evaluate what is working and what is not, and pivoting. So what a lot of us do is we pick a goal and then we just hope for the best. We like go out, we just think that we're going to, like I said, be motivated. We're going to stick to it. And then if we don't, we start beating ourselves up. We don't look at why it didn't work. We don't look at anything. We just look at like, I'm terrible and I'll never stick to things, and this is why I can't be successful, which doesn't help anything. It doesn't change anything. All it does is create more shame, and it creates these like shame cycles that you put yourself through, and then it stops you from hitting other goals. The one thing I want you to do is set a time where you're going to look back at what worked and what didn't work. Like a really easy way to do it is just at the end of the week, every single week. Now, if that's too much for you, maybe do it at the end of the month. Each month, you're going to like set a time. You don't need that much time. You need 20 minutes, right? To look back and look at like what worked this month or this week, what didn't work. And I'm very strategic in starting with what worked, because our brain typically likes to look at everything we do wrong, but you want to look at what you did right. You want to like move your attention to kind of spotlight to see that, because if you don't see it, you will constantly think that you are failing at everything, when in reality, you might be doing it like 80% wonderfully, and there just needs to be a little bit of tweak. So you want to start with okay, if I have this exercise goal, what did work? What were the times? Like maybe it was because I had an accountability partner. Like maybe I really need someone waiting for me at the gym. That's the only way I'm going to go. Or I hired a trainer for once a week. Or I, signed up for this class online that's like gamified and I want to kind of get this top status. Like that motivated me to do it, right? Or maybe like there's just specific things like if I set out my clothes next to my bed and my water is ready and everything is like ready to go, then I tend to get to the gym on time. Or you get what I mean, is like just look at like when was I actually doing it? What was happening? What was I feeling? Maybe it's like the days that I actually get enough sleep, I'm more likely to work out the next day. And the days that I am working really late into the night, the next day I kind of find excuses to not do it. So you want to look at what's working, and then you want to look at what's not working. So instead of looking at like, okay, I was supposed to go work out 3 days a week, but I worked out 2 days a week, and I'm just going to decide that means I never stick to things and I'm a terrible person, I'm going to look at like, why did I not go that day? What was going on? Instead of getting angry at myself, can I get curious as to like, I want to do this thing. This thing is important to me. I've chosen this goal. So why am I not doing the thing I want to do? And the more you can get curious about it, the more you can uncover so many things about yourself. And you can look at like, like I said, maybe I didn't sleep well the night before. Maybe I got in a fight with my significant other. Maybe I worked really late. I had a really late deadline. Maybe it was really cold out. So like I go for runs outside, and if the weather's a certain way, it's harder for me to go. Okay, once I know what's not working, it's easier for me to then pivot. It's easier to say like, maybe in addition to going for walks or runs, I need to get a gym membership. So the days that the weather is not good, I go to the gym, or I need to get warmer clothing, or I need to make sure I sleep a certain amount, or I need to make sure that I eat a certain amount, whatever it might be. The more you actually take the time to see why, like what was going on that got me to resist, that got me to fall off, the easier it becomes for you to course correct and rectify, so that it becomes easier for you to actually do the thing that you want to do. And I think that if people just spent the time doing that, reaching your goal is actually not that hard, because it's a lot of little baby steps over time, right? Over the year. It's like every week you're just inching towards this. But I think that we just assume that we should do it perfectly, and then we assume that we're just going to stay on course, and then 8 months goes by and we're getting towards the tail end of the next year, and we're like, oh, I haven't done anything on my goal. And so I that's what I want to stop. I want you to just like schedule in, put it on your calendar, a meeting with yourself for 15 minutes every Friday at noon, or every Sunday night. You're going to sit back and you're going to look at like, what worked this week, what didn't. Just doing that, just asking those two questions and thinking about like, what do I want to do differently next week, can fundamentally shift how easily you get to your goal, right? You might very quickly realize like, oh, these are the things that stop me from being successful. These are the things I need to put in place. If I do this, I'm much more likely to stick to the thing that I want to stick to. So that's my advice for you. Break it down into small steps. Expect it to be hard, and expect yourself to not be consistent, and evaluate and pivot and figure out how you can be more consistent. What is getting in your way? Learn more about yourself. The more you do, like the easier it actually becomes to apply those things to other goals, right? You don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. Like when you realize, I do better in the mornings, or I do better in the evenings, or I do better with accountability, or I do whatever it is, you can start applying that to the next year and the next year and the next year. So like slow down, stop beating yourself up. It doesn't do anything except for feel terrible. It doesn't help you get to your goals. And in fact, I would say that it hinders you. It gets you to give up because it feels bad to beat yourself up. So just start getting curious and figure out what it is you need, and then give that to yourself. All right, my friends, we are, coming up to the end of the year. I hope that you take this time to kind of reflect on what worked and what didn't work in this last year for you, and what you want to do differently next year. And you set those goals and you implement these processes so that you actually hit them. There's so much that is available to you if you just kind of set yourself up in a way to do it that's enjoyable and doesn't have you hating it the whole time. So hopefully this helps. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out at any time to me. And in the meantime, I will be back next week with another episode.